In 2011, Rich Froning won his first CrossFit Games championship in just his second appearance. From there, he went on to win 4 straight, only stopped by his own retirement. In 2016, Matt Fraser won his first title in his third appearance at the CrossFit Games and went on to win again and again and again and again. Like Froning, only being stopped by his own decision to retire. It seems to be a trend in the sport of CrossFit that once you win, you kind of just keep winning. In 2021, after Fraser's retirement, a second-year competitor named Justin Medeiros won the CrossFit Games at 22 years old, and then did it again the next year in 2022. With Justin's impressive performances at a young age, everybody was strapping in for what felt like it was going to be another long dynasty. But fast forward 2 years, and Justin hasn't cracked the top 5 at the CrossFit Games or Rogue Invitational since that 2022 season. From being the fittest man on earth and winning every competition he touched, to hanging around in the middle of the pack at the CrossFit Games. What happened to Justin Medeiros? Most people don't realize how good Justin actually was during his reign as champion. And this is partially due to the fact that throughout his 2 winning years, he only won 1 single event. In fact, in 2022, he became the first person to ever win the CrossFit Games without winning a single event that year. Let me repeat that. He won the entire CrossFit Games without winning a single one of the 14 events that happened. But that does not mean he wasn't dominant. In fact, he was one of the most dominant champions we have ever seen at the CrossFit Games. This is every event placing from the 2021 and 2022 CrossFit Games, which are the 2 years he won. Justin never had a placing lower than 18th. Neither Matt Fraser or Rich Froning ever went 2 straight years without placing that low on one event. Justin started to get a reputation for being able to get the most out of each event at every competition he competed in, always maximizing his game plan, strategy, and pacing to somehow snag a couple extra spots on the leaderboard. He was never the best at anything, but was always right up at the top of the field in every little thing that could happen. Always at the top regardless of the workout. He was the epitome of consistency. For 2 straight years, he did all of this while in an extremely competitive field filled with some of the all-time greats. But come the 2023 season, for the first time in years, Justin found himself not sitting at the top of the leaderboard. His performance in the CrossFit Open slipped from the 2 years previous. In fact, a 40-year-old Dan Bailey beat him in the Open. And I know it's just the Open, but as the reigning champion, something felt a little off. There was a lot of talk about whether or not this is concerning, but was commonly brushed off as, he's prioritizing strength right now, he's the champ and doesn't need a peak for the Open. And this sentiment seemed like it may be true because any concern caused by this performance in the Open was shut down just a few weeks later when he won the worldwide quarterfinals with very impressive finishes and worldwide wins in 2 of the 5 workouts. But at the 2023 semifinals, Justin wasn't so lucky. He struggled throughout the weekend and eventually took 5th, still earning a spot to the games, but some real concern had started to creep in. By semifinals, he should be looking a lot better than this. But again, the reigning champion is not worried about semifinals. At this point, Justin Medeiros could qualify for the CrossFit Games with a hand tied behind his back. And if the history of the CrossFit Games has taught us anything leading up to this point, it's that you should probably never bet against the reigning champion. In August, Justin showed up to defend his title of fittest on earth. At this point, 2 wins had already put him in rare company, but 3 would elevate him into a territory that only Tia, Matt, and Rich have known. Although there were some emerging stars in the sport like Roman Karenikov, who finished 2nd in his first appearance at the CrossFit Games, many spectators were already accepting that this would be Justin's years to three-peat. The first event of the 2023 CrossFit Games was a 40-minute max distance bike ride. In this event, Justin Medeiros crashed his bike not once, but 2 separate times. By the end of the event, he ended up taking 29th place, the worst event he had ever had at the CrossFit Games, which didn't last long because he topped that poor finish with a 37th in event 2. In this shockingly poor performance, Justin looked crushed. He was breaking up movements and actually failing things he normally never would. After doing a few wall balls, he would put the ball down and look like he just did 100 unbroken. It was obvious in this event that this was not the Justin Medeiros we are used to seeing. In the final event on day 1, just a few hours after that bike event, Justin came out onto the competition floor without a shirt on, and you could see how banged up he was from the crash, with marks on his chin and chest. The rest of the competition was up and down, but finished with Justin taking 13th overall at the end of the weekend, conceding his title of fittest on earth after holding it for 2 straight years. 5 days after the conclusion of the 2023 CrossFit Games, Justin Medeiros posted this video on his YouTube channel where he talks about what happened for him at the Games this year. In this video, he revealed a few things that give some insight into why he performed at a lower level than usual. The first is how the crash on his bike in this first event actually affected him throughout the weekend. For one, he wasn't able to properly refuel after completely emptying the tank in this long workout. On top of this, the crash may have affected him in ways besides just bumps and bruises.
Last workout of day 1, and remember, like, they called us for the crowd, walk into the crowd, and I remember finding them, like, oh shoot, I'm like, hey, I never got my chip timer. I had it on, like, it's on your ankle. And I was like, I remember sitting there and I was like, when did that get put on?
He also talked about how because he was already losing, he took some gambles on events that he normally wouldn't have that didn't pay off. In another video posted a few months later, Justin sat down with the 5-time champ Matt Fraser and gave some more insight into what happened for him in 2023, saying that a few things caused him to not be able to train the way he wanted to leading up to the games.
I had some shin splints going on where I wasn't able to run pretty much at all.
That's big going into the games.
Yeah,
the running is like the #1 component.
It's in almost, especially when you get out to like North Park. Almost every event in North Park has a running aspect.
Well, even when there's not running in it, there's still the transitions. If you're running back and forth 5 times on 100 yards each.
And if you're doing any type of aerobic training, like it's like biking, running, and like maybe like some rowing and stuff like that. But those are like the 2 main things, and just wasn't able to do that. And then I had something going on with my shoulder to where like it was just like a complete like loss, complete activation in it. Like I had no idea what was going on. I like trained in the morning. It was like pretty good. And then just came out for the second session. And like, I did like get my elbows together and this arm was just like this.
And what he said in these videos pretty much lines up with his performance. In fact, this is his placing on each event from the 2023 CrossFit Games. And at first glance, they are fairly inconsistent, but if you remove the workout where he crashed his bike, the one that immediately followed, and the 2 workouts that involved running, the finishes start to look a lot like the Justin Medeiros we were used to seeing. And this is still including that Olympic lift where he took some risks because he was already losing. Which brings me to a point I would like to make about this whole situation that I think may get overlooked. In the past, if there were 5 people all within a couple seconds of each other in an event, Justin was the one to come out in front. Same fitness level, but the little gamesmanship would get him those extra points. And those points would start to add up over a competition. It would be easy to see how Justin, who had been at the top for so long, could lose some of his gamesmanship or mental intensity now that he's fighting for a less than desirable spot. It's hard to go from winning everything all the time to losing. But if he could somehow get himself back into the mix with the top guys, it may reignite that mental intensity. But if the 2023 CrossFit Games were a couple of strokes of bad luck for Justin, then what happened in 2024? As the 2024 CrossFit Games season began with the Open and quarterfinals, Justin's performances looked somewhere between his championship years and his performance in 2023. Not at the top of any competitions, but some solid finishes to get him through to semifinals. And at the 2024 semifinals, the Justin Medeiros we were used to seeing looked like he was back. He cruised to a smooth first place overall finish while never placing lower than 8th amongst an impressive field. After this first place finish, we were set up for an incredible showdown at the 2024 CrossFit Games. Sadly, due to some terrible circumstances, bad programming, and a number of other issues at the 2024 CrossFit Games, they're not really something you can judge someone's performance off of. But we did get to see Justin compete in a more standard competition setting this year at the Rogue Invitational. And while his performance was a bit underwhelming, there were still flashes of that champion Justin Medeiros. In a behind-the-scenes vlog he posted on his YouTube channel, both Justin and his coach made mentions of how he's been having problems running for the last 2 years.
I mean, the foot is an ongoing piece, but the running has been more successful. I think it's he's making like solid progress. So, I mean, I would say that like here versus the games has been like way better. But is it at the capacity of like that top tier dudes? Like, no, not quite. Which is okay. I mean, we're trending in the right direction.
But event 1 honestly went great. Like I was super stoked about it. It was the first time I've done a running workout in the past 2 years where I wasn't limited by pain and I was limited by fitness. Still a similar showing, but like I've only been running for the past 2 months and I feel great. And I was 30 seconds off of like a top 8 finish, where I was 30 seconds off of that, or I was 30 seconds off of like a top 30 finish at the games in the mile run, and we had a 4K run today. It felt super good to do it, but I was really taxed because that was probably like the hardest I've ran in the past 2 years, you know?
Here his coach says it's an issue with his foot that has been keeping him from running, but in 2023, Justin said it was his shins. It sounds like he may have sustained another injury at some point over the last year. In the end, Justin ended up taking 8th place overall while not really looking anything like himself of the past. As we have seen in the history of this sport, once you have a top spot, it's very uncommon to give it up. Justin went from being back-to-back champion to having a couple very underwhelming years. He had a rough start to his games when he crashed his bike in 2023. He seems to have had a number of injuries over the last 2 years, like shin splints, a shoulder issue, and now what sounds like a foot injury that have kept him from training at the capacity he usually would. It's also possible he's lost some of his mental intensity due to the fact that he's in uncharted territory, not at the top of the leaderboard. But fitness doesn't leave you. Justin is only 25 years old. He has shown he has the physical tools to win the CrossFit Games. If he's dominating semifinals and taking top 10 at competitions while battling multiple injuries and less than ideal circumstances, what happens when he gets healthy? Do we see the return of the youngest and one of the most well-rounded champions that we've ever seen? Do those moments of Justin barely edging out guys for a couple extra points in the final heat come back? Is Justin a sleeping giant simply waiting for everything to align for him once more? And will we ever see Justin win another CrossFit Games title? Let me know what you think in the comments below.